If you ask about origin of science, then there is a big variety. But a science better be defined by a condition that it fulfills, and the condition is that science is tested by evidence. And in detail, what this means is that scientific statements are refutable by evidence, and they are not refuted by evidence. Inside science, evidence means mostly it's observation, I mean, sight, or maybe hearing as well. But this lecture is to point out that this standard of refutable but not refuted is itself not a scientific statement. There's no science. It's not taught in physics or chemistry or biology or any science subject. And actually, this is standard is based on the law of contrapositive of logic, which says that if a result of a statement is wrong, the statement is wrong. So the standard itself is not of science, but something good about science is that science makes a very clear and good use of the standard. But still, the standard can be used outside science as well, so that evidence can be used outside science as well. So if you are talking about outside science, then you would say any reasonable belief, maybe inside science or maybe outside science, should be justified through evidence. But in science, the evidence is limited to sight or sometime hearing. But if you are talking about outside science as well, then you have to say mental evidence as well, and I have to tell you what mental evidence is. And refutable the word can be made flexible by saying it as judgeable, like judges do. And not refutable, you can say not negated. So that's the thing, and this, so I have said normally. So normally means mostly, but sometimes you have to use outside science. You have to use your feelings as well. So that means spiritual evidence as well. That is what it means. And normally has exceptions. That's a spiritual evidence. But and I have to tell you what is the status of using this spiritual evidence. So that is the plan, and now I start the actual lecture. And actual lecture, what I'm saying that if inside science your standard is refutable by observation, then you make it more flexible or more general, so that it can be used outside science as well, and so that you can say that refutable, you can rephrase as that refutable statement inside science or outside science is refutable if other than its implication could be experience. You remember, refutable is a possibility, so it could be experience, and inside science you would say results or calculations or so, but outside science you may have to use the word implications. Okay, now come the actual. Actually, the statement should not be refuted by observation inside science, but in general, outside science or inside science, you can say that the statement is not negated by. If you are outside science as well, then you better replace the word observation by experience. And inside science, you would say testing, and in general you can use the word judging or checking. And that's not limited to science. Testing, you may say the testing word is limited to science, but judging, judging means what literally this means what judges do. Now you may have a complaint about any decision of a judge, but I want to clarify that means I am talking about the nature of job of a judge. I'm not saying that every decision of every judge is a standard. What I mean is what judges do, what they should do. That is the standard. It's not necessarily what they actually do. they can actually do a mistake. But if you go to actuality, then even in science there can be in actual science there can be mistakes. So the topic is what is the claim standard of judges. That's the job, and the claim standard is that they have to give reason. So that what means they have to give reason through evidence, and that what we see in general for every belief you should give reason through evidence. And what but the evidence, the way judges use evidence, that's not calculation, that's not experimentation. So that means it is an activity, you can understand, that's outside science. So what activity is judging? If you want to me to give you a definition, then Wikipedia definition is that evidence, the judges use evaluate evidence. So that means this means they tell you evidence is good or bad. So this means if it is good, it's a checking. And the checking is related to testing. So these things are, these activities are related to science. But toward the end in the definition, there is the word to make a decision. And that is something we normally do not talk about in science. In science, we say this calculation says that, experiment says, and we make full stop there. We do not, in science, we do not take what is the decision to be made. In science, the use of science is made by maybe politicians or so, but outside, if you are talking about in general human judgment, then they make a decision as well. So these are some differences of, so actually there's a flexibility, the generalization for judging. Now, if you I've said you that this refutable but not refuted standard can be used outside science as well, and you may well demand me examples of usage outside science. Then the first example I have selected is means human beings, the use of say present tense. That we use present tense. That means we say that what happened happens and that will happen. Now this is our habit. Our means human beings' habit. That is a statement, and that is called principle of uniformity of nature. I will show you later. Just a moment later. Sorry, a quotation which uses this phrase, law of uniformity of nature. But before that, what I mean to say is that I make a plan that I have to tell you, I have to answer 3 questions about law of uniformity of nature. One, what is law of uniformity of nature? And the second is that why it is not a scientific statement, why it is outside science. And the third is that how you can use the standard of refutable but not refuted for it, even if it is not outside science. That's the whole plan. And the plan is for this very PowerPoint slide. So this is a bit congested PowerPoint slide, so I will try to spend more time on it. So I really start telling you also what is uniformity of nature. Uniformity of nature means, I've told you, this is our use of present tense. Whatever we found by experience, what we say is not only we saw. We say things continuously happen. So whatever we saw, we see the same, and we will see the same. This means the nature is uniform. It's not that nature was different and is different to what it was, and it will be different to what it is. Not that. Nature is uniform. You understand it? It's the same. So that is a claim. Now here you would see, so maybe before telling you actual reference where the phrase is used, and maybe finishing the definition of or introduction to the uniformity of nature, when you see the actually phrase, First, I talk about what I said about the our usage of present tense, and you might be thinking, what is special about that? Is it something to be checked? You're so much used to using present tense that you may think that it's not something that we need to check about. Now here philosophy comes. It's philosophy is one. If you ask me why philosophy is to be studied, then one quite popular answer is that philosophy should be studied for critical thinking. So you are used to usage of present tense, but philosophy will do critical thinking about your habit of using present tense as well. And critical thinking would say that you think of that your habit is something habit. It's not, you don't take it for granted. There is something when you use the present tense, you do something special, and you're still thinking that what else it could be. If you think it's not special, then you would say what else is could be. Then what else to answer that what else it could be, I've selected a quotation by David Hume, which is a Scottish philosopher of 18th century after Newton, physics, and it's a well-known name in philosophy. And Hume believed that the world was stable enough so that one could record meaningfully in it. Okay, so that means you understand when you say what was, the same is, and the same will be. If sun rose, if I saw the sun rose from east, then sun rises from the east, and sun will rise from the east. So so there is a stability. What it was, that is, and that will be. But that much stability may be, if you are talking about yesterday and today and tomorrow, that maybe even a non-philosopher can understand. But philosopher like David Hume has pinpointed that even you don't need to talk about something 24 hours before and present 24 hours later. Even in the very small time in which you are speaking a sentence, even that and that is something remarkable, that the stability in that the same sentence has, while you are speaking, it has a past, it has a present, it has a future, and you can speak a sentence that means the stability while you are speaking. And if you think what else could be, then Hume has said that it could be that you begin and end the sentence in different words. When you started, it was one word, one world, one universe, and when you finish the sentence, it was replaced by another. But that's a logical possibility you keep in mind, and you contrast with that possibility. Then you understand what is special about your using of present tense, and special about your usage of present tense is that changing universes, that does not happen. You speak the sentence begin and end in the same word. So that is a stability, and that stability means almost the same thing as uniformity and stability of the word, I said. And Popper, which I have introduced already, he replaced the word world by nature and stability by uniformity, and called it principle of uniformity of nature. So that's, I hope I have conveyed you what is uniformity of nature. And now I have to tell you why. So yeah, I told you three jobs to be done. First was what it is, and I think hopefully I have conveyed you what is principle of uniformity of nature. The next question is whether it's inside science or outside science. Now to get that aim, to answer that question, I give you, first I will tell you that apparently it is inside science. The reason it is inside science is that the principle of uniformity of nature generalizes our knowledge of the past. If we saw sun rising from the east maybe 10 times or 20 times or 100 times, this principle says this generalizes to infinity of time. It's always, so when you say always, it's infinity. So it's a generalization. A generalization is an inductive reasoning. And inductive reasoning, the way I've told you, inductive reasoning is used in science. So why I'm talking about that inductive reasoning, uniformity of nature, and calling this is beyond science? And the answer is that it is beyond science because it means the principle of uniformity of nature is beyond science because because normally inductive reasoning is about particular thing. You know, you saw sun rising from the east, yeah, maybe 10 days ago, and it was a particular. Maybe 7 days ago, it was a particular, and so on. And then you generalize it. But in principle of uniformity of nature, your input is not particular. If your input is particular, that is a typical something happens in science, then a new discovery can change it. So if new discovery can change, that's a science. But if new discovery cannot change, that is beyond science. So that is so I tell you, I agree that there are few things which I have not explained it. So let me come back to that. But for the moment, let me go ahead and then I come back to things which are not explained. So what I continue is that when you say that principle of uniformity of nature is not a science because science change with a particular discovery, but the principle of uniformity of nature does not change with any particular discovery, and that is special to principle of uniformity of nature, and that is why it is not science, and that is why it is beyond science. Now, this is a claim I've made, and you have a right to ask me what is the justification of the claim. And the justification what I give you is that normally for inductive reasoning in science, your input is a particular reasoning, particular experiments, particular observation. But for principle of uniformity of nature, your input is not particular. Input is not a discovery. Science changes the discovery, but here, because for principle of uniformity of nature, it doesn't depend upon discovery. It cannot change with the new discovery. The reason is that if you do not use principle of uniformity of nature, if you don't use, for example, present tense, you cannot make a discovery. So normally scientific explanation is after a discovery, after observation. You make an observation, then you explain it. But principle of uniformity of nature is not after a discovery, after any observation. That is precondition. That is before a discovery, before any observation. If you make any observation, it's a precondition on it. If you for any discovery or any observation, you must use principle of uniformity of nature. It's a precondition. It's a before it. First you fulfill that condition, then you use present tense, and then you do observation, and then you compare with the previous knowledge and categorize that observation is discovery. So that is the reason that why it is not science. And now I go back to the top of the PowerPoint, and I explain you things which were left unexplained in last few minutes. You know, beyond science, I have explained it. Reality as a whole, you know, principle of uniformity of nature is not about some particular observations. That is about the whole. Whatever we speak, we use present tense. You know, reality as a whole is also a definition of philosophy. The philosophy talks about reality as a whole. That's the definition of Encyclopedia Britannica. So you must understand, try to understand. If it is a difficult thing, then it has many usage. What is that? This concept of not related to any particular things is useful for defining philosophy. That's one thing. Another thing that is useful for understanding a major task in major chapter in history of philosophy. The major chapter is namely Immanuel Kant. The book was I'm talking about is a critique of pure reason. Now, pure reason is also called a priori reason. Now, a priori is the phrase I've used already. So, a priori means pre, is it before any observation. And it is to be contrasted with the posteriori, which posteriori is you make a particular observation and then you explain it. That's a posteriori. So our use of present tense is not related to particular. That's is a priori. Now, if through that we also want to understand Immanuel Kant, then Immanuel Kant said that when you say a priori independent of particular experience, then independent particular experience can be mathematics as well. 2 plus 2 equal to 4. That is also that doesn't depend upon any particular experience. You remember, I'm not talking about 2 chair plus 2 chair, 4 chair, or 2 pen plus 2 pen, 4 chair. No, I'm saying 2 plus 2 equal to 4. So that is not any particular. So that is one thing. What is the example of not particular? But another example of not particular could be, not depending particular could be, I say, speak a sentence. You pay attention to it, please. That I say all husbands are married. So that does not depend upon any particular husband or a particular person. Actually, that's independent of particular experience, because if you understand the meaning of the word husband, then you automatically means is not married. So it's the statement all husbands are married, or maybe all triangles of 3 sides. They're not something which we learn from any particular experience. That's one thing. And Kant said it. These examples, all husbands are married and all triangle of 3 sides. These are not that we learn through any experience of any kind, because they are learned through the analysis, the meaning of the words. So what we learn from meaning of the words, that is called analytical, and what we learn from experience, that is called synthetic. Now you come to this question of what we are discussing. Our use of present tense or principle of uniformity of nature, which is a precondition, and I think I do not have time to repeat each and everything which I said in the last 5 minutes or so. Whatever I said, do you believe in using present tense, or you believe in principle of uniformity of nature because of this meaning of the word, or it's something that you have, it's something or is it an information that you have learned from experience? If it is just meaning of the words, then it is analytical. But if you have learned from experience, that is synthetic. Experience I mean information. So it is precondition, but its precondition is believed because of analysis of words, or is believed because of something, because of experience. And Kant said principle of uniformity of nature or present tense, or so. This is this example of principle of uniformity of nature, this is not example by Kant himself. Kant himself gave example of that geometry and the physics, Newtonian physics. That these are the usual geometry. He said it's not that any particular triangle has a political triangle in a plane has a sum of angle at 180 degrees. Every triangle has sum of angle at 180 degrees. So that is but that is not when you say the sum of triangles, sum of angles of a triangles. If you just know this word, that does not automatically mean 180 degree. So 180 degree is an information, but the information is not any particular triangle. So that is one example Kant gave, and that is still valid. But the other example Kant gave was the Newtonian physics of his time. That we said that the physics is valid for every experience. So physics is not learned from particular experience. But that the second example of Kant is wrong, because physics of his time was changed because of particular experiences. So the example of physics, I have replaced Kant example of physics by principle of uniformity of nature. which I think is not to be changed by any particular experience, by new discovery. But that is that's what we have learned from experience, so that's why it is synthetic, but it is not. It's not experience, but not any particular experience. That why, and then it is a priori. So we have done the additional task as well, which is not needed to understand today's lecture mainly, but it's an important thing. Kant. So if you have also understood Kant, that's additional benefit. If not, then don't bother. This was a, I understand this is a difficult PowerPoint slide, and if you did not understand all of it, then don't bother. It's just one of the example of using refutable but not refuted. If you understood something of it, it's enough. Otherwise, you can rely on the next example. But let me complete, for completeness, let me tell you the third question as well. The first question was, what is principle of uniformity of nature? The second was why it is not science, and I hope it's conveyed to my side. I have told you, answered both questions. The third question is it refutable but not refuted? And the answer is hinted by admitting that it's inductive reasoning. The inductive reasoning is refutable but not refuted. So this principle of uniformity of nature should also be. So that's the expectation, and I just explicitly verified for this particular example as well that yes, it is refutable, principle of uniformity of nature, and its refutability. And if you want to keep the word refutability to science, then you can say otherwiseness. That means what I said, it's a possibility that other than its implication could be seen, and this possibility is that other than, its implication of principle of uniformity is that past and future are related, and they are combined in present tense. I may see this. This is not. I may see, but if you say I may not see, that you may see that they are. You may not see they are related. You may see this unrelated. That is refuting possibility, and that is refutability. So that means it is refutable, principle of uniformity of nature. It can be checked, and in actual checking, it's successful. In actual checking, we see that past and future are related in the same condition, in the same place, in the same example. They're related, and we can dub them. We can combine them in present tense. So that means it's refutable and not refuted. It's not negated. Okay, before going to the next example, I have something more about principle of uniformity of nature as well. It's a reference. Presently, I gave you quotation for David Hume for whatever I said it, and Karl Popper. Both are philosophers. And now I include a quotation from a scientist, hopefully well-known scientist, Stephen Hawking. He writes in his book Brief History of Time that the same thing that Hume said that the world could have been not stable, and the words the same thing. But Hawking is a scientist and is a physicist, and physicists use equations. So the same thing, essentially the same thing is said, but in the language of equations and rules, scientific rules. And Hawking said that what is that? We have equations or rules of science, but equations are just our writings. What is the breath of fire into equations make a universe for them to describe? I write something. Is it my writing? Is that able to force such a big universe to follow it? Not. What is that breath of fire into this? Our writing is a fire, but unless it's a potential fire, but unless some factor breathes fire into it, this equation will not be effective. We make equations, we make a mathematical model, but that does not answer why there is a universe which obeys these equations, and why universe has to exist. And if universe does not exist, who will force universe to exist? So that means the universe could have not existed. It's a possibility pointed out. Could have not, if you say this possibility pointed out, that is refutability. But actually, actually our equations are obeyed. So that means actually it is not refuted. Now the question is, who has made universe obeying our equation? That means who sustains the universe? Here we are entering a discussion about sustainer of the universe, or you may say it's a creator of the universe. That is, we are talking about our very faith, maybe religious faith or so. But here even I am using some argument, evidence. Evidence is principle of uniformity of nature. So that means even in the world of faith, normally the impression is that when you come to faith, there's no reason, there's no thing, and only thing is your personal likeness or dislikeness, or people say there's nothing common between faith and science. But here I'm saying, if you want to use reason, that you can use reason even about the question of faith. Anyway, that's I've done with the first example of using the uniformity, refutable but not refuted, and that was principle of uniformity of nature. And my second example is values. Second example is actually split into two slides. One is a value, and the next is moral value. So you can say 2A and 2B. 2A is a value. For the moment, is a value. More particularly, actually, in the very first thing, wherever the statement I'm going to try for refutable but not refuted it is outside science because it uses should. And David Hume said that science, he didn't say science, but he says is. Description cannot lead logically to should. In present terminology, description is science, so that means should is not part of science. But this statement, what I'm going to test by refutable but not refuted, this is not a scientific statement, that is not in physics, that is not chemistry, that is about science. So this is not in science, but that is about science. Anyway, the statement is called normative statement. Normative has something related to value, and that I actually said in my third lecture. I've told you what is the relation between normative and value. For the moment, just use the word should, and should is normative. And the question is it refutable but not refuted? And the answer is that it is refutable. And here I'm using even the notation I use for refutability. The statement is small p, and refutability, I may see it's obeyed, that's a capital P1, and I may not see it's obeyed, that's a P2, capital P2. That's a notation I used earlier as well, introducing Karl Popper. And here, if your P is that science should be used to survive, your P2 should be that is, first thing is that your refutability should be a possibility. So convert the statement to a possibility, that's one thing. And possibility should be a negative possibility, negate it. You have science and survive. Either negate science or negate survive. Don't negate both. You negate one of them. This minus is negative, negate. So if let me see which I've negated. We may see survival. So I've kept survival. Okay, now here what I say. We may see a survival without science. Sorry. Without is, sorry, I didn't pay attention to it. Without is a negative word, so I've negated science, but kept the survival. So that is a possibility that we may see a survival without science. Or the other thing could be that you keep science, but you negate survival. So no survival with science. These are the possibilities. This possibility means this can be refuted, this can be refuted, but now in actual, not refuted is actual, and actual is not negated because an actual science is good for survival. It's not negated, it's actually rather you can say obeyed. Okay, now maybe I finished that example, but before going to the next slide, I point out that this should, and there's a quotation about the usage of should and science. And you judge yourself what is the usage of that, but anyway, I think it has some relevance. And that is that quotation is by the book titled Philosophy of Social Science by Nancy Cartwright. And the quotation is that scientists can and should, should and science are together, should study that what interests them and what derive their interest can be a range of values So I put I think it's relevant because the quotation uses three things: science, should, and a value in the same sentence. But otherwise, it's not part of essential part of my lecture, and I think basically that's the introduction to the word value. And on a value, I have next slide. So, and in that I go to not only value but some moral value. Value could be I like this thing or dislike this thing, but moral value means I like action, doing something. An example of moral value is that say, the speaking truth. It's a moral value. You say you may think it's a good, or you may not. Not is may not is a refutability. For refutability, you should convert that to possibility and then negate as well. So I think you understand the task. If you have to find out refutability, and that I accomplish that task. Negation and possibility. You combine those things. What you end up as that. In the statement you didn't have any may, but I introduced the word may to make it a possibility. You may think and then negate either this relation of truth and other things. Either you negate truth. I think here I have not negated truth. I said keep truth, negate the other things. The statement was that speaking truth is demanded. Even if the people who do not speak truth, they demand others to speak truth. Even if politicians who do not speak truth, they claim to speak truth. And truth is necessary for doing science, and truth is necessary for sustaining a society. So that's a statement. In short, I said truth, but in detail, I meant that statement. And possibility for refutability is a possibility, as I've introduced the word may. And negation is that you speak truth if you maintain, and you negate either demand. If people do not demand truth, or people do not claim truth, or people do not follow to do science, and society sustaining society. So society is sustained without following truth. So you negate other things. Or you may like to negate truth and maintain the other things. So without truth, not truth. No truth is demanded, not is demanded. Possibilities may be. No truth may be demanded, or no truth may be claimed, or no truth may be necessary for doing science, or no truth may be necessary for sustaining society. So this may and negation combination means it can be done. So that means this statement is refutable. And now, actually, it is not refuted. Is the stage of actuality. In actuality, this statement is not negated, and truth is not negated, and truth science relation is not negated. And for that, I use a quotation by the same author, Cartwright, which I ended up the previous slide. And the Cartwright says that the value of knowledge itself must be respected such that the scientists pursue methods that aimed at genuine discovery. Now, genuine discovery is which I said shortened by the word truth. Now, meanwhile, I should tell you that a student has asked me that for teaching that sometime even without truth, people progress in science, and I had to admit this in actual. It is also there. I cannot deny that. But my answer is that this is an exception, and the exceptions are also even inside science. I have this previous lecture. I said that my example was that if you pee, there was inside science that high pressure leads to stable weather. To checking that, even that has problems when you say not refuted. So problems are there, but some exceptions are there. But maybe I or maybe the books I've told you, they do not have any better standard. So that's I have to teach you that standard anyway. But you should not standard. If you want, you can replace by a better standard. That's very good. But I have to introduce what is available. So the two examples I've covered. uniformity of nature and values or morality or whatever you can say that. And the third example is for refutable but not refuted is trust, confidence. And for trust, I have to answer again the three questions: what is trust, why it is outside science, and whether it's refutable but not refuted. And the answer to why what is trust is that trust is a confidence. And to answer that, I make together that I combine this question with another question, and the other question is trust. I'm assuming that it's a normally English usage word, so you know the meaning. So I combined its formal introduction with another question, that is trust used in science as well? And I tell you, answer is yes. And when I tell you how trust is used in science, that will also tell you very clearly what trust is. But because if something is used in science and how it is analyzed, it is how it is used in science, that makes it that science has that good feature, that science is maybe the most clear of all subjects. And if the trust is used in science and you know how it is used, that will also very clearly tell you what trust is. So toward that end, I have to mention Thomas Kuhn, American, people call it philosopher, but you may say that he was a sociologist of scientist. Again, a difference of opinion. I tell you why I think one opinion could be he was not philosopher, but he was a sociologist. That you would say that if you say philosophy is that what science should be, but Thomas Kuhn did not particularly tell about what science should be. Thomas Kuhn honestly, maybe, mostly at least, he tells you what is the science mostly. Normal science is. Normally what scientists do. And what Kuhn said that normally, normal science is the term of Kuhn, normally scientists do not check for refutability but not refuted, but normally they just follow a tradition, a paradigm, and they remain working using that tradition or paradigm without checking if it is refutable but not refuted. In the tradition, the particular term of Kuhn himself is a paradigm, what is that scientific tradition. So the paradigm is, in fact, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, paradigms are a conceptual worldview that consists of formal theories, classic experiment. They make in education you learn experiments, success stories, and science and that you start trusting in them, and that is related to this word trust. And I think there's a heading, and I've done that job, and I think maybe I've told you what trust means. They have a confidence, but still I say what is the trust? What is the difference between trust? What is special to trust? So the introduction is not complete, and what is special to trust is that normally if you have a statement, a scientific statement, according to proper standard, if it makes one false statement, this should be rejected. But if you have a trust in that, then because of one false example or so, one refutation, you will not immediately reject it. Trust means that you will give some time. You may say, if you're a scientist, you will say, maybe the experimentalist has some mistake. Maybe it can be reconciled. Maybe there's a possibility of saving the old paradigm or so. You give some time. And so that means that's special to trust in comparison to ordinary things. So I think I have told you what trust is, and now the question is it refutable? So apparently trust is not refutable because you have a trust, so you will not leave it. But if it's a scientist, if it's a reasonable person, then eventually, if it is one failure, it will be trusted. Two failure, trusted. But if it's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, eventually there are many repeated failures, then this trust can be refuted as well. And this possibility of this is refutation or leaving trust is this inverse of Thomas Kuhn, that's called crisis. So because of crisis, it's refutable. So, okay, now next question is this. So I've told you that trust is used in science and how it is used. And the question is it used outside science as well? And that's I would say yes. Your trust in other person in your life or in history. You can also say that if your the experiences with other person, or your knowledge of history of other person, if that creates a crisis, then you would leave your if a possibility is crisis, then you may leave your trust. But actually, but in actuality is not refuted. Whatever you are trusting at this moment, you are trusting because the trust has not disappointed you. So that means they are not refuted. And the last example is that, I said the word mostly outside science, the standard should be used. But outside science, things are not that clear. So maybe my whole lecture has not put you in some feeling that outside science these all things are not sufficient, and sometime outside science at least, maybe sometimes rarely inside science as well, but mostly outside science, you don't depend upon refutability but not refute, but you depend upon your feeling. But here we say, even if you're feeling that your feeling can also be refutable but not refuted. The way your feeling could be refutable, that means you could have not felt, but they are not refuted because you did feel. So even feeling can be refutable but not refuted. They can make an evidence. Evidence is your internal feeling, or you may say your spiritual experience. But I think I should say one thing. I should say the spiritual experience is evidence or refutable but not refuted, and reason only for that person who has felt, who has have spiritual experience. What is wrong is that spiritual experience is of one person, and he or she say to other person that just follow me because I have had a spiritual experience, and that is, I think, is not justified. You can use spiritual experience for your own self purposes, but spiritual experience is not like a common human experience. So that I think that is not good for using for like a science or knowledge. Or the examples I have given you, previous example in this lecture, they are about science or knowledge. They are common human knowledge, but spiritual experience, I don't understand how it could be common human experience. Anyway, so that's the end of it, and the conclusion you can see yourself by pausing if you like. And I say goodbye and thank you very much for watching that.